Hi, I'm back, and today I'm here to talk about step 11. And step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And so by now we have understood that we are going to be talking about God, whatever you want to call it. We are not attached to any kind of a label, but we would like to think that by now you understand that there's something greater than yourself. As long as it's not you, because the insanity that I have experienced is thinking that whatever it was that I was doing that wasn't working might work the next time if I try it again. And the insanity of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so by now, if you've gotten to step 11, hopefully you've worked the first 10 steps and you've seen the miracles and the promises that happen when you actually do the work involved with these steps. And the willingness and the open-mindedness is a small price to pay for the power that these steps offer to change your experience and to bring you some happiness and joy and freedom from the bondage of self, from whatever it was that was ailing you, the reason you started checking out these videos in the first place, the reason that you decided to work the steps. And if you're working steps in a 12-step program, I'm hoping that these videos are helpful to you to expand and enlarge your understanding of how these steps can be applicable. And to tell you the truth, this is just my way of my interpretation of the steps and my understanding of them as read in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And everybody's is going to be different, but this has been helpful for me. This is such a big step. I did take some notes, and I would like to read just some of them. And as I read them, I'll just make a comment about them because I almost don't even know where to start with this step except at the beginning. And so one of the things is that if I've been using alcohol or food or sex or shopping or anything to fill that void that's inside of me, that the only way that it can be filled, by the way, is with a relationship with a power greater than myself. I find out by now that it's not working. But a lot of the times it was an instant gratification. And when I was feeling sad or angry or lonely or frustrated or depressed or resentful, I could take a drink of alcohol, I could eat something, I could go shopping, I could immediately change my mood by something that outside of myself to try to fix what was going on inside. And there's that kind of like king baby idea that I want what I want when I want it. And we saw that in the fifth step that does not work. We have consequences from that. And so that, I don't want to wait for results. I'm spoiled. I'm used to instant results from whatever it is that I was using. This has got to be smashed, this idea. And I have to be willing to wait on God because I'm doing God's will. My desire is to do God's will, but I can't do God's will my way. It has to be God's will, God's way. And so sometimes when I pray about something and I'm asking for help, I would like to get immediate results, but that's not the way it happens. I have to wait. And, I always say, praying is like talking to God. Meditating is like listening to God. And so praying without meditating is like ringing God's doorbell and then running away. And I always tell people to hold on, God's old. We'll give him a chance to get out of that chair and get to the door. You have to wait on him. Don't just rush away when you don't get an answer immediately. And trust that if you're at this point in these steps that you know that God is dependable and that God is reliable and that you can wait on him and he'll take care of you. He'll bring to you the answers that you're looking for. They might not be what you want, but they're going to be what's best for you. Because remember in step 3, we turned our will and our lives over to the care of this God. And that's my thoughts and my actions about any given person, place, thing, or situation. And so I have people that argue with me all the time. And, what about all the bad things in the world? What about all of, the children that are starving and the abuse and the calamity, the catastrophes, the natural disasters? Yes, there's all of those things, and it's life on life's terms. And I can look at all of those things and say, how could you believe that there's a God because of those things? But then I could also look at the things that are working and say, that's how I can believe that there's a creator, that there's something greater than myself. I don't understand how God works. I'm too small, and God's too big, and I'm okay with that today. I accept that. And I look around and I see the ocean and I see the trees changing and I see the clouds in the sky, and I had nothing to do with that. So I've made a decision in the third step to turn my will and my life over to the care of God that I don't necessarily understand, but that I have come to trust. And now I have come to rely on. And newcomers come in this way and they want to argue, and it talks about in the AA literature about we stop fighting everything and everybody. But newcomers especially, they still want to fight. And I recall feeling that way. So I have compassion and I have tolerance, and it talks about love and tolerance in the big book of AA, that it's their code, that they can't, pick and choose what they want to be. They have to be loving and tolerant. And for them, it's life and death. And it might not be life and death for you, but it certainly is nice to know that this works no matter what it is that you are trying to change. This works for everybody. So this meditation and silence, I'll tell you what, the ego does not like it and is not interested. And the worst thing, as far as the ego is concerned, is prayer, is me trying to make a direct contact with a power greater than myself. And the ego is going to do everything. As I said, EGO, easing God out. The ego is going to try to do everything it can to, thwart my efforts to try to get closer to God. Don't be surprised when your head takes off and you're trying to quiet it down. This takes practice, And so I have to experiment with it. And I know that a lot of people want to argue with me about that too. It's like, I can't do it. I said, you know what? All you have to do is try. All you have to do is make a start. And when I started to try, I started to feel different. Like alcohol. A lot of people, when they were first drinking or doing drugs or things that they're doing that, that aren't working anymore, in the beginning, it wasn't so great either. A lot of people, when they first drank, they got sick. Or when they were first, doing drugs, that they didn't like the way they felt, but they kept doing it. It took a while to get used to it, but they started to appreciate the feeling that they got from it. And it's the same thing, with prayer and meditation, is that it's not easy to get into it, but once I do start to feel differently. And they talk about it in the 12 and 12 of AA, that it's like air, food, and sunshine. My body needs that, and it's just the same thing for my mind, self-examination, prayer, and meditation. These are, sort of to me the three legs of the stool. And the emotions and the intuitions of vitally needed support, and not only needed support, but I want this support from my emotions and my intuitions. I want the help, and no human power can do this for me. So I begin to realize that I have this unshakable foundation once I start to build this relationship with God. And just like any other relationship, you have to spend time with a power greater than yourself and get to know him, her, it, that, whatever. But you have to spend time with it. And so I started to realize that that foundation is pretty unshakable. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't shake, because I do. I just don't lose my footing completely anymore, and I certainly have this unshakable foundation that I can stand on, that I know can help me with whatever's going on in my life. And so these practices do bring much relief and benefit. And, my desire is to do God's will. I don't know if I'm doing it, and people ask me, how do you know if it's God's will? Because typically I don't want to do it, to tell you the truth. I still want what I want when I want it, but I understand now that there's consequences, and it's a high price to pay, and I'm not willing to pay it anymore. So I'm willing to try to do this work. And Thomas Merton said something along the lines of, I think that the desire to do God's will is what pleases God, not necessarily doing God's will. So all I have to do is have like an honest desire to do God's will, and God will take care of the rest. And so the St. Francis prayer is really pretty terrific, because it talks about, comforting instead of being comforted, loving instead of being loved. Like, it's not all about me anymore. It talks about it in the AA book about seeing what I can contribute to life instead of, all about me. And when I start thinking about other people, then I start to feel better. It's sort of a crazy phenomenon that happens, but I die to myself. These old ideas die. These new ideas start to take hold. My life is changing. I cannot dispute the fact by now at step 10 that I have seen some really big changes in my life if I've done this work. And I say, do this work. You can listen to these videos. You can go to meetings. You can sit there. But unless you're willing to do the work, this isn't really going to do much for you. I mean, it's nice to listen to. I can't imagine people don't want to listen to this unless you had to, or unless you were really desperate, which is how I love to work with people when they're desperate. But by now you start to realize that this stuff is working. And, for me, I just want more of it. If this is working and I'm starting to feel better and things are starting to change, I want to see how much better can it get. And it just keeps getting better. And so I stopped fighting. I stopped fighting this idea. I stopped fighting this idea of God. I stopped fighting the idea that I knew a better way and that I think that I should, have my way. I'm done. Now it talks about also about being able to use my imagination. I certainly used my imagination when I was doing those things that weren't working for me, telling myself, "Oh, it's fine, it's okay, it'll be okay, it'll change, it won't be so bad this time." And now that was a destructive way of using my imagination, telling myself a story that wasn't true. And so now I'm going to start to use my imagination constructively and start to tell myself, this is possible. I can change with the help of a higher power. I can change with the help of other people. If I'm in a 12-step program, I have the ability to use 12-step groups. And I have the ability to, call other people and identify with other people that are going through the same thing. And that's really helpful. And so, like anything else, I'm going to try to, get in the mood to set time to pray and meditate, get that place, set aside that tells me this is my space, this is my place that I'm going to sit here to read and to write and to get quiet. And I cut out that time and I dedicate it to spending that time with God. And just like any relationship, if I want to get to know somebody, I got to spend time with them. And I give them my full attention. So, this is there's a Emmett Fox who wrote Sermon on the Mount, and he has this thing he calls the golden key. And it says, instead of thinking about the difficulty, no matter what it is, think about God instead. And that's a pretty powerful, expression of meditation, because people always talk about, well, my head, starts to spin and I start thinking about all the things that aren't working. And all I have to do, it's not easy. All I have to do is adjust. It's not easy. But what I have to do, what I can do, what I get to do is to shift my focus back onto God and off of the things that aren't working. And then I start to feel that relief and that bondage of self that St. Francis Pirate talks about, dying to self, dying to my old ideas, stop thinking about myself, all the time. And that meditation, it's just a start. I have to start somewhere. And so it talks about in the 12 and 12 about, it's almost like, to me, it's like a paper plane. I'm just going to start. Never did one before. Just fold it up and then wing it out there. And I watch it go, and it doesn't go so good. But I think, all right, I'm going to try it again. And I fold it a little differently, and I have a little better understanding of how to, send it off. And I keep doing it, and I keep trying, and eventually it gets better and better. And I just make these little tweaks and a little piece of paper and throw it out there. It's that simple. And it's the same with meditation. I just take a stab at it and I just start. And the willingness will help me to make a pretty good start. And the fact is that I have to do the work, because willingness without action is fantasy. I have to at least make a start. And the object here with the meditation and the prayer is to improve my relationship with God. And it's just like as if it were with a person. And so one of the first fruits of prayer and meditation that I start to experience is this emotional balance, which is foreign language to me for a long time. I had no idea what that meant. But I start to get a sense of, it talks about in the book about matching calamity with serenity. And I start to see that in my life. I'm not as crazy and all over the place as I used to be. And so this is going to begin to broaden and deepen the channel between myself and God. And that channel is connecting those two, bodies of water. But this is connecting me with God, and I want to extend it, broaden it, deepen it. And I have to do the work, and that's where the prayer comes in. And I'm praying for knowledge of His will. Nothing specific. I'm asking God, what's your plan? Because my plan, to tell you the truth, got me here, and it's not working so well. So I'm willing to listen, and that's where the meditation comes in. And I have to, it really does help me. It says it permits us to return to sure help in moments of stress. And that means that when I'm starting to spin out a little bit, I can remember that God is right here with me, and that I can ask for help at any time of the day or night, and I can receive guidance. But I have to stop making demands. I have to stop saying that, I think that I know the best way to have this happen or go down, or what this should look like. And I have to be willing to just turn it over and ask God for direction. And that rebellion, sometimes it really happens is that I just don't want to do this. I don't think there's any benefit in this. But the fact is that I want to be willing. I want to be willing to at least try. And when I do try, I do see the benefits of it. And then I start to see that, I'm asking for the power to carry out what I think that I'm being asked to do. And, a friend of mine used to say, I would say, well, how do you know if it's, the right thing to do? And she said, you just, as to the best of your ability, you move in that direction. And then if it's not the right direction, you'll know. God will let you know. That intuitive thought, that Latin root word of intuition is teaching, that teaching from within. I have a relationship with God now. I have an ability to tap into that. I'm not alone anymore. I've been doing the work in these steps, and I have the ability to call on this higher power and ask for help and trust that it will be there. And so the question becomes all the time for me, the question is, do you trust God? Do I trust God? And if I do trust him, then I'm going to act like that. I'm going to trust that if I'm going off on the wrong trail, he'll let me know and he'll get me back on the right path. And I've heard this before, and I love this idea of a GPS. If I'm in the car and I'm getting ready to go right now I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona. So if I'm getting ready to go from Flagstaff, Arizona to Phoenix, Arizona, I get in the car, I put in the GPS, punch in Phoenix, and I start moving. And if I get off the trail, it'll say, please return to the highlighted path. And if I get too far off of the path, it'll say, please make the legal or not legal, next U-turn and get back on the path. And don't worry so much about, oh no, I'm lost, I can't never get back there. You can get back there. Just get back on and start moving again in the right direction. And trust that, this will get you where you want to go, which is, to me, pointing towards happy, joyous, and free. And that's why I do this work, because I found that happiness and that joy and that freedom, the freedom from the bondage of self, the freedom from doing things the way that I was doing things most of my life, and it wasn't working, and I was getting deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole. And so now I've had the ability to come up and to come out and to see this, beautiful broad horizon that God offers, and that there's so many ways of looking at things today that are positive, that I make a choice to do that, and then more positive things come to me. And that comes especially in the form of people that I can help. So I'm hoping that this is helpful for you, and I'm hoping that you are following along, doing the work here, and practice this prayer and meditation. Many great books, many great prayers, poems, opportunities to learn how to meditate all sorts of different ways, or just sit there, like I say, 5 minutes of writing in the morning, sort of clearing my head out, just asking God for help with certain things during the day. If I have to make a phone call or see somebody or whatever it is, just asking for help. Not so much specific outcomes, but help with the things that I have to go through. And then just spending a little bit of time reading something of a spiritual nature, and then just sitting quietly. Have a cup of coffee with God. Sit for 5 minutes, and I call that 5, 5, and 5, and it's a really simple, basic way to start. So I hope that's helpful, and sorry, this is a long video. It's taken me a little bit of time and effort to get back into making these videos, so please bear with me. Anyway, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that you're, come along this way with me, and I'll see you next for step 12. Here we are, almost at the end. Okay, or as they say, a new beginning. Thanks.